It's official. Jaren Hall is the starter. Nick Mullins has been benched. What do we make of all of this? Plus your bold predictions on the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You like it? 3, 1, 2, 3. You like it?
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for those of you who do listen every single day. I appreciate you all very much. If you are new, you can find this show anywhere you find your favorite podcasts, whether it is an audio listening place like SiriusXM. And also, if you go to the SiriusXM app and search out Vikings, you can find live broadcasts of all Vikings games, including this Sunday night coming game against the Green Bay Packers. You can also find this show on Amazon Fire or Roku. Just download the Locked On Minnesota Sports app, and even on YouTube. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Some news coming out of the day. A few different things interesting to talk about, but the big one is that Kevin O'Connell confirmed and decided, I guess, on quarterback. It seemed a little bit different than the Josh Dobbs situation for one reason or another, right? In that the Vikings were having openly Jaren Hall take first team reps. They didn't do that, if I recall, after the Josh Dobbs bye week, like on the Josh Dobbs bye week. Even though they did give Nick Mullins some of those first team reps, if I recall, we didn't see it, and it only came out after the fact. Hey, yeah, we gave him some first-team reps just in case we wanted to put him in. In this case, Jaren Hall and Nick Mullins in practice were like swapping reps. They were rotating, at least in the portion of practice available to the media. And now it was announced on Thursday, we know that Jaren Hall is going to be the starter. So he is going to get the rest of practice to himself, right? He gets the Thursday practice or whatever he got of the Wednesday and Thursday practices with rotations and the entire Friday practice. He's the guy. He gets to go into the game knowing he's the guy. I think at this point, everyone's leash is a little short. You're just looking for a spark. You're looking for someone who can handle the situation at hand. And that now we turn to Jaren Hall. So if you would like to know more about Jaren Hall, I recommend humbly that you go to patreon.com/LukeBraunNFL and just search Jaren Hall on that page. I did a college scouting thing when the Vikings first drafted him. I did 2 of the 3 preseason games he participated in. The other one I didn't really feel like you could learn anything about. Otherwise, I would have. I did all of his snaps in the Green Bay game, or at least all the ones I found to be relevant, and all of the ones in the Atlanta game, which those 2 don't add up to be much, and they're parts of larger videos about something else. But both of them have a lot more Josh Dobbs in them. But you can still see it if you go to my Patreon page. But I'll give you the broad strokes if you don't want to do that. By the way, all of those are free to watch. You do not need to have joined. I would still obviously appreciate it. Here's the broad strokes of Jaren Hall. What we have seen so far is he's quick through his progressions. He can deliver the ball on time where he means to put it. However, he will just get caught sometimes not seeing dudes. The decisions, he makes decisions within structure, which is something Dobbs did not do. And who can blame him? But it wasn't going to change, right? And he carries an athleticism that Nick Mullins does not have. For these reasons, because he has the runaround, he doesn't have the athleticism that Dobbs has, but he's got a little, right? He can scramble a little. He doesn't quite have the quick release that Mullins has. I think Mullins gets the ball out faster, but it's okay. And it felt like he struck this really nice middle ground between the pros and cons of both Dobbs and Mullins, which is why I've been asking for this for a few weeks now. But it's interesting because as I go back and I did a big giant Patreon video about the Nick Mullins game and the 4 interceptions, broke down all of those and all of his other good plays. To me, it's weird because what Dobbs did in that Bears game was markedly worse than what Mullins did in his 4 interception game. If we're to compare the 2 4 interception games, the offense moved against Detroit, didn't move at all against the Bears. That kind of implies that Dobbs should have been on a shorter leash, and he wasn't. And the fact that Nick Mullins knows the playbook means maybe you give him a little bit more time, or maybe you don't. Maybe because Josh Dobbs was new, you give him a little bit more leeway to say, well, maybe he'll pick some things up and be better next week. Or he'll be better, let's give him the bye, see if he can learn something. And maybe that's the logic to being more patient with Josh Dobbs than you were with Nick Mullins. Or maybe it's the fact that you're just excited about Jaren Hall and you want to see what happens if you throw the rookie into the fire. Whatever it is, Jaren Hall likely takes the Vikings through the last 2 games. I can't imagine a scenario where Jaren Hall plays benchably poorly, but also the Vikings are still in playoff contention. Like, you're just going to give him the last 2 games. So we'll get a nice sample size. We'll get to see exactly what Jaren Hall is made out of. But one thing that I like about Hall that I don't really get from the other 2 guys. So Nick Mullins just could not throw accurate balls to the outside consistently at all in the Lions game. He could throw some absolute darts, just seeds, man, over the middle. Absolutely beautiful. I mean, you could probably think of 4 of them right off the bat. Post routes to Justin Jefferson. The throw that TJ Hawkinson got hurt on was a really good throw. And he got hurt after the catch. All kinds of great plays there. The KJ Osborne one deep down the field right out of halftime. And then there were the throws to the outside, which were not there at all, right? A bunch of the interceptions, I think 3 of the interceptions were to the outside, and one was kind of on the hash mark and was supposed to be to the outside, just deeply inaccurate, trying to throw deep balls to the sideline. Well, guess what Jaren Hall's specialty is? Deep balls to the sideline. We're talking, turkey hole in cover 2, corner route stuff, go balls. If he has to get a ball to the sideline, he's really the BYU lived on that. And one of the reasons I liked Jaren Hall going into the draft was because the system that he ran at Kentucky, the system he worked in, was a McVay style system. They ran rollouts with flood. They ran a lot of the same concepts where you had to progress to a dig on the backside. It's not literally the same concepts, but the idea of 1-2 on the front side, 1-2 on the backside, and having to progress across a full field like that is something that Jaren Hall did in college. And he was able to do, at least in his senior year, which is most of what I watched, or maybe I think all of what I watched when he was coming out. And you saw that in the preseason. You saw that even in the limited sample we got of him in the regular season. So I don't worry too much about the ball being late, or at least not any later than it would be with the other 2 guys. Thinking about the choices we have here. My concern with Jaren Hall is more about ball security, which is kind of funny because Kevin O'Connell said, well, we got to take care of the ball. So we're putting Jaren Hall in. At BYU, look, there were some bozo turnovers. And I've kind of been saying for the last, 6 weeks or however long it's been since Kirk got hurt, all 3 of these guys have turnover issues. So you're not going to get rid of turnover issues by putting in one guy or the other. And the hope is that, okay, maybe there's some interceptions, but maybe there's not 4 of them in a game from this particular guy because there were from the other 2 guys. Maybe we can at least keep it to a minimum. Keep the game-breaking mistakes to a minimum. That has to be the hope, right? But if you look at the BYU, I'm sure you can find lowlights, or you can find highlights against BYU. It's rough. Some of these interceptions that he throws are just not even explainable. They're just, how did you think that there was a guy standing right in front of the receiver you were trying to throw at and you threw it right to him? You just didn't see a linebacker that was standing right in front of you. You didn't see a safety coming over the top. Sometimes it'll come of him. It'll be very Nick Mullins-y hero ball interceptions. He'll be running around, scrambling. He'll flip up a stupid one that gets intercepted. So I I want to set your expectations to a realistic place. It's not going to stop happening. There's going to still be turnovers. It's who the Vikings are. And hey, if they play a clean game, Kevin O'Connell, I saw this stat. I think I saw it from Dusty Baker, but he credited someone else. I saw that stat. The Kevin O'Connell has never lost a game where the Vikings were either even or ahead in the turnover battle. Has not yet happened. So do that, win the game. Seems like a pretty good formula. But with Hall, it's really hard to guarantee that. Regardless, though, just like academically, I'm pretty stoked to have him starting. I'm just excited to watch him and see what I can find out about him, right? I get much more exposure to him, and the team has seen him all year, and now we get to see what they've been seeing. Coming up on the show, we are going to do prize picks and your bold predictions. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. If you're trying to get a hire in for the new year, or you're just gearing up to get that process started for Q1 2024, make sure you go to LinkedIn Jobs. I mean, come on, you got to go to LinkedIn Jobs. You got to get your posting on LinkedIn. They have millions of qualified potential hires right there. More than 1 billion, in fact, professionals. It makes it the best place to hire. LinkedIn knows that small businesses have people wearing so many hats that if you are trying to hire for a small business, that is definitely not the only thing you have to worry about right now. And LinkedIn wants to make it easier for you. So they have a ton of people at your disposal and a whole bunch of tools to help you get that job description out, like a job description writing assist tool, as well as screening tools and stuff to help you pare down that big giant pile of resumes when it comes in. 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Thanks again for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day. When you're done here, go check out the Locked On Minnesota Sports live sports feed. We are here at Locked On are doing first of their kind 24/7 feeds. If you go to Locked On Sports today, you can see a national one with all sports. There has not been a thing like this before. Live streamed 24/7 top stories. For some markets, Minnesota gets to be one of them, as well as Locked On Sports today for all sports. So go check them out. If you wait on YouTube on this show and you don't touch any buttons, it'll just take you after the show. It'll just take you right there. So go check it out. Let's move on to our prize picks, prized picks. Been having a lot of fun with prize picks this year and been doing not the best, but not bad. Actually got a dub on some of these demons and goblins last week. So if you join me in that, you would have done okay. The only one that didn't hit was Jordan Addison's yardage because he got hurt. But thankfully, PrizePicks has a reboot feature where if a player gets hurt in the first half that you had as part of your play, they'll just take it out and treat it like it was I had 4 picks in mine, treated it like a 3-pick one. Pretty cool. I'm going to do 4 again. So this week, PrizePicks is fairly sparse on the Packers and Vikings games. There's a lot more elsewhere. Sometimes that'll happen with late games. You got to check in later. But as I am recording this, there's not a lot to choose from. So I have gone outside of the Packers Vikings game for a couple of these. And again, I'm going in on the Demons and Goblins. Demons and Goblins is a thing that PrizePicks is doing with some of their more aggressive stuff. And I think it's a way for them to try to balance touchdowns a little bit more because there's been, we'll say, an inefficiency there. I hope you got in while you could. The idea being that if you take something like the first one in mine, which is Justin Jefferson, more than half of a rushing or receiving touchdown, you get boosted payouts, non-standard payouts, up to 100 times your money, where on a regular play, you can get up to 25 times your money. So these demons and goblins can kind of boost you up, or the goblins are a little bit less, a little bit more conservative, but then the PrizePicks has set those amounts a little bit easier to find as well. I am going ham on the interceptions this week. I'll get to those, but first, Justin Jefferson, more than half a receiving yard, or half a receiving touchdown or rushing touchdown. In talking to Peter yesterday, we talked so much about Jair Alexander, and we recorded that And then I got on a plane to go from where I grew up, where I was home for Christmas, and then back to where I live now. And when I got off the plane, I saw that they had suspended Jaire Alexander. So rendered that entire conversation moot, which I put a note in the show for you if you missed that. But so that changes a lot. And the way that the Packers secondary really shut down Justin Jefferson last time, part of it was because the Vikings had their like footing issue, right? And there were times when that concept totally would have worked out, but Jefferson fell down, or he fell down and the ball, he was open and the ball went past his corpse right into a Packer's arms, right? Like there were these like major moments where that happened. So part of it was just JJ kind of being dumb and not wearing the right cleats. That's on him. But what the Packers did strategically was the same thing a lot of teams did. They did cover 2 all day long, and they had Jaire Alexander shadow Justin Jefferson, press him, and jam him. And Alexander has a nasty press, but to press that nasty, to really get into somebody, is a very risky proposition for a defensive back. You can't do that if you don't have safety help. You shouldn't be allowed to do that if you don't have safety help. That's not a thing about what Jaire Alexander is or isn't capable of. I still think he's a good corner. I know he hasn't been as good lately, but I still think he's a good corner. But it's more that like, if you try to press somebody that hard and you don't have safety help, you are getting chewed out when you get to the sideline. That's a terrible idea. Nobody should do it. But when you do have safety help, you can go ham. Because what's he going to do? Beat you deep? There's a safety there, right? So jam away, push with reckless abandon. And that's what Jaire Alexander did. And he's really, really nasty when he does that. So great job of the Packers for setting him up for success. Like everybody got really mad. Like Packers fans will get really mad when you point that out. And it's like, there's no shame in that, right? The Packers set up your really good player for success. And then he had success. What are you mad about? They can't do that without him though, right? Like they can still do that and they might still do something like that, but it's not going to hit the same. It's going to be, Carrington Valentine and Eric Stokes. Like these guys are not going to be the same. So I have a feeling you see a little bit, you're going to see a lot of too high from the Packers. Maybe even quarter half, because Joe Barry, he is their Ed Donatel right now. They had a streak of like 3 weeks in a row or something like that, where they kept giving up NFC offensive players of the week, like over and over. It's rough on that defense right now. And without Jaire Alexander, I don't know what they do for Justin Jefferson other than like sell out so hard that the Vikings can just like run forever on them or something like that. Or maybe this becomes the Brandon Powell game or something insane. Anyways, I have a good feeling about JJ in this game. Similarly, I have a bad feeling about the Vikings defense. And Jordan Love's more than less than is at 239.5 passing yards. That's not that much. So I put a more than in there. I just see the like Jordan Love is better than he was on Halloween when we saw him last. He has taken a couple of steps forward, and the Vikings defense is just on its heels. Possibly no Byron Murphy again. He has not practiced. They're banged up, and they're like super figured out by especially McVay style offenses. Well, guess what the Packers are? And I feel like they're a little bit more confident in what Jordan Love can do now, so they're not going to come with the Mickey Mouse nonsense that they came out with before. It's interesting. This will be the second time a team has played the Brian Flores defense for the second time. The Bears did it, and they came out with a very Mickey Mouse game plan. I don't think the Packers are going to do that. I think they're going to see the tape from the Lions and Bengals, and until proven otherwise, I don't know if the Vikings have the tools to stop it. In terms of the interception ones that I'm so bullish on, Brock Purdy more than half an interception. He threw 4 last time. That just seems decent. Going up against the Washington Commanders. Now the Commanders aren't exactly. I don't think they do a lot of turnovers, but if I remember, at least from the Vikings game, Brock Purdy just does throw them up sometimes. He just does kind of heave up jump balls and stuff. So I could see like a Benjamin St-Juste, making a clutch play kind of thing. And then I also put Josh Allen, who's going up against the New England Patriots, more than half an interception. That is also, it's just kind of the way Josh Allen has been playing. So it's more kind of betting on interceptions from those two guys rather than betting on the defenses that they're playing, which may turn out to burn me. But, it is what it is. I always like to do the flex play option, which means that I can still win some money if I only get 3 out of 4 correct. But if you want, you can do the power play, which is more standard, 4 out of 4. And if I did the power play, I'd be winning 18 times my money on that with 3 of their demon options. So you can go wherever you want, or you can disagree with me and go another direction. Check all of that out at PrizePicks. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by DoorDash. DoorDash is an incredibly clutch option, especially here in the limbo times between Christmas and New Year's, where time doesn't exist. I'm not cooking, man. I'm not going to meal prep. I'm getting something delivered. Let's be honest here, especially when there is a game on. You don't want to get up and have to run out and get food and miss a bunch of stuff. So head on over to the DoorDash app and browse through it. Find stuff that you maybe didn't know existed. Some hole-in-the-wall stuff, mom and pop shops that just aren't on a street that you typically go by, but they can be pretty good. I found a few by me, to be sure. You can get 50% off of a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order. Just download the DoorDash app and enter code LOCKED23. That's 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and enter code LOCKED23. Subject to change, terms apply. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. It's America's favorite sportsbook, and it's America's favorite sportsbook for a reason. You can find all sorts of wacky parlays, spreads, over-unders, and player props there. And you can also get in on a lot of really cool promos that are very often on FanDuel. So check out FanDuel.com or the website every once in a while. If you're already signed up, check back. You're going to find some pretty cool promo stuff. You can also, if you are new, get $150 back in bonus bets for winning any $5 moneyline bets. You can pick any favorite, no matter how strong, how heavy a favorite they are. Put $5 on their money line, and assuming they do win, you get $150 back in bonus bets. That's 30-1 odds on a heavy favorite. You're not going to find anything like that anywhere else. So head on over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and finish the season right. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Time for the best part of any given week on the Locked On Vikings podcast. It's time for the bold predictions. I got a little southern there. That was weird. It's time for the bold predictions segment. This is where I take your craziest predictions, the wildest things you can possibly come up with. And if any of them hit, I get punished. We haven't had that yet, and that's the way it should be. So here's how this works. I ask you for bold predictions. I pick some of my favorites. I read them off, and then they're locked in stone. Let's go back to the Detroit game and see if we grab any of these bold predictions. The first one came from Torm Hustvit, who said that Sam Laporta and Hawkinson would have the most yards combined as tight ends in any game in history. Laporta, kind of a quiet one. And Hawkinson got hurt, although he was having a pretty good game, 40-some yards. But no, we did not set any records. Both of them acquitted themselves well. Laporta did a lot in the blocking, I will say. He was good there with all those Jahmyr Gibbs runs. Shadow Flame says that the TJ Hawkinson revenge and legacy game would happen. Hawkinson scores multiple TDs, including the game winner. Well, there was no game-winning touchdown, now was there? If there were one, it would have been to Justin Jefferson anyways, but that got intercepted instead. Minnesota Sports Appreciator said that Santa travels roughly 13,000 times the speed of sound. In celebration, a Viking player will have the fastest sprint speed recorded on a touchdown play this year. Currently, that honor belongs to DK Metcalf, who went up to 22.23 miles per hour in Week 13 on a 73-yard reception touchdown. The highest one for, 7 of these are Miami. The highest one for Minnesota is not on the list. Very nice. So I guess we didn't get there. The next one came from Landon Renly, who said that the Vikings would abandon the push and embrace CJ Ham. Ham has 4 carries, all in under 2 yards to go situations, and he would convert all of them. They did sneak once, didn't they? Or did they hand that off? They had a 3rd and short that they easily converted, but I forget if it was a sneak or not. I don't think it was. Sports Guy 79 said that it wasn't CJ Ham though. I'm pretty sure it was Chandler. He said that there would be more fake punts than actual punts in the game. Alas, we were not treated to any fake punts. And Doug Brown said that the Lions would wear horrible gray jerseys and both teams are punished with an interception fest, at least 3 interceptions per team. So we did get an interception fest. It wasn't that balanced. We got 5 total turnovers with a fumble from the Lions and then the 4 Mullins interceptions. But we did get an interception fest, and the Vikings were punished for their aesthetic sins. So you really got this in spirit pretty well. Of course, you were cooked as soon as the Lions wore the blueberries, which, that's what they call their like blue on blue uniforms. Which after I posted the show, a couple people like messaged me and were like, yeah, it says rumor has it they're going to wear the blueberries. So the gray's not going to happen, which, thank God. But of course, bummer that one was over before it started. But I will say the Vikings did make a major aesthetic faux pas in abandoning the white end zones on their whiteout. Last year, they had that white end zone. It looked rockin'. It was very cool. This year, they did not have the white end zones. Once again, the Vikings are betraying the vibes of their jersey aesthetics by not bringing the end zones along. When you do the throwbacks, we need to see those Argyles. When you do the whiteout, we need to see those white end zones. You're not going to win a game in your alts until you start doing this. That's science. That's analytics. Listen up, Vikings. You got to commit and do your end zones. Okay, let's move on to the bold predictions from the Green Bay game. Less of them this time. People, I think, are still a little tired from the holidays, but they are very, very, very good. We'll start with Jace Evers, who said that Ty Chandler will score more touchdowns than the Packers score points. Kind of going to have shutout city for this to happen, or you're going to have, so you said more, by the way, ties don't count. You're going to have, a 27-3 kind of game, or it would have to be more than that. It would be 30-3, 31-3 with 4 Ty Chandler touchdowns. It'd have to be like the Dalvin Cook Lambeau game and 4 touchdowns. Can be receiving touchdowns, though. You did not specify rushing or receiving, so you're open on both of those. But you're going to have, of course, a pretty low defensive total. As soon as the Packers score a touchdown, this one's pretty out. Max Brous said that Greg Joseph will miss what could have been a game-winning field goal as time expires. Packers win. And this field goal miss also causes someone to lose their fantasy football Super Bowl, potentially from James and Reeves Hell League. I adore this one. This is one of my favorite ones that I've gotten all year. Okay, so I'm going to have to amend it a little bit. I'm going to open it up just a little. Very, very bold. I'm going to make it slightly less bold. For one, I don't need it to be a Packers win necessarily. And that means that it can be a game-winning field goal as regulation expires, and then we go into overtime. That would count. Or a game-winning field goal potentially as overtime expires, and we get a tie. Or that could have been, the win or loss also. But it has to be a clock hits 0 on the field goal. It has to be a potential game-winning field goal. What else happens around that, I'm not particularly concerned with. And what I'm going to do as well is remove the potentially. It has to cause somebody to lose a Hell League championship. So if you are unfamiliar, the Hell League is something from another Vikings podcast called Norse Code. They have a fantasy league that started out as a joke where about kickers missing extra points, because we had that so much that one year, and all years. And it would be like minus 25 points for a missed extra point, right? It would ruin your whole fantasy day. And then it evolved into getting points for field goal yards, and they have a safety now, and defensive scoring is insane. It's insane scoring. It's the worst fantasy football league I've ever been a part of. I hate it and I love it. And there's, I think, 8 versions of a Hell League with all of Norse Code's people. So it has to be one of those Hell Leagues. They have to have Greg Joseph in it, and it has to be the difference between them winning and losing. Minnesota Sports Appreciator says that in honor of balls dropping on NYE, the Vikings and Packers will get the party started with a combined 6 drops between the two teams. I don't think that is a high enough number with 6. He picked 6 because it's going to be 2024 and 2 plus 4. I don't think that's going to be it. I'm going to up that to 10 drops, just a nice round even number. That feels a little bit more bold to me. The Vikings put up 6 drops on their own 2 weeks ago. So it feels like 10 is a harder number to hit. Plus, this is two very drop prone teams. Vikings have a lot of drops. The Packers have a ton of drops. So I feel like we can juice this up. Shadow Flame says at least 3 interceptions are thrown by the Vikings, but each by a different player. Jesus Christ, I love this one. I adore this one. So we must also have an interception fest. We have a few ways we can get to this, right? We can get Jaren Hall and Nick Mullins. Josh Dobbs will be the emergency third QB. It can be him, but it would require both Hall and Mullins to get hurt, not benched. Or we could bench one. We could bench Hall. He has interceptions. Then Nick Mullins throws an interception. And then we got to have like a trick play. Justin Jefferson throws an interception kind of thing. So there's a few different lanes here. All of them are funny. I love it. Skull Train 87 is the last one, who said the most rushing yards in a game by a Vikings running back versus the Packers was Adrian Peterson in 2012. Yeah, that 210-yard game y'all remember when he went over 2,000 yards. The most rushing yards in a game by a QB versus the Packers was Dante Culpepper in 2001. He had 75 yards rushing. That's interesting. I kind of thought he had more in the 2004 playoff game, but whatever. I'll take your word for it. He says the Vikings starting running back and quarterback will break both of those records in this game. I absolutely adore it. That is going to do it for this week here on the Locked On Vikings podcast. I hope y'all have a great New Year. Stay safe out there. All right. We'll be there with a postcast. I have no idea who's going to be on it, but I know I will be. After the game on New Year's Eve, we'll be live breaking down the game, and then we'll scurry off to whatever festivities we have. So I will see you all for that. And as always, Skol.